welcome to an episode of the Modern Divorce Podcast. I am your host, Billy Tarasio, Arizona family law attorney and owner of Modern Law and Win Without Law School. And today I am owned by attorney Rachael Collier. Rachael, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
Great. Welcome to the show. Rachael is an attorney at Modern Law, and this episode is going to be about getting to know Rachael and how to defeat orders of protection when they have been in place against you wrongfully. So Rachael, how are you doing today?
Really good.
Fantastic. Will you tell people a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. I came to Arizona now about 6 months ago. So this is my first summer, and I'm indoors because it is hot. And prior to this, I jumped around quite a bit before landing in Arizona. I went to law school in Boston at New England Law, Boston. Graduated in just last year, took the bar, lived in Colorado right before this, and I decided I wanted to go warmer. Hopefully I like that decision. So far, I like it.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, it is hot. It is hot. So you love dogs. You are currently fostering a dog. Have you tell us about that?
Yes. So I love all animals. I have 2 dogs, 2 cats of my own that I can't wait to bring out to Arizona. I'm just waiting for the yard and all the things because they're spoiled. In the meantime, I have Crash. We can post a link for Crash. I adore Crash. I love Crash, but he is a foster because he doesn't get along with other dogs very well. So it's temporary. But yeah, he had a deadline. They call it a deadline, which is so terrible.
But
they had the euthanasia date.
Oh, a deadline. Oh,
a deadline. Yeah. We deal with deadlines all day, every day. And that deadline, it just broke my heart. And so one Tuesday, you might see my billing was a little low because I'm on the phone, can you get Crash to me before? And so, yeah, he's here now. I have the door closed because he's a little mouthy, but yeah, so I'm fostering him right now, but he's available to a great home and he's a good dog.
Is he? So tell people who might want Crash or consider adopting Crash, what would be a good home for him?
An apartment is perfect for Crash, which, isn't normal for dogs, but he's just older. He's 11. He beat cancer. So he just wants to wake up and have his breakfast, have his dinner. He's like a timer. He wakes me up at 8 a.m. if you need an alarm clock. And, he's so good though. I mean, he's sleeping. Of course, now that I say that, he'll do something crazy right now, but really it's just a simple old man. He's Australian Shepherd kind of mix.
Yeah.
So he's a bigger dog. He's like 65 pounds, but just loves his snacks. And I've been told that he doesn't like children. I had an 8-year-old here the other day though, and he was good. So
that's good.
Yeah. And I guess Maricopa County, I didn't know this until Crash, but they're having like an overall crisis of, if you go on their webpage, it's terrible. Every single day there's dogs with dates.
Oh my.
And it's just heartbreaking.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we'll post a link to Crash. We'll post a link to the Maricopa. Is it the Humane Society? No, who is it?
I'm not even 100% sure. I think it's just like the Maricopa County Shelter.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll post a link to that. And hopefully we can get some dogs adopted. Maybe Modern Law could even sponsor the adoption fees. Are there fees associated with adoption?
Not that I even know of. I'm fostering through because you have to be sponsored for certain dogs. And they've been amazing to me. It's called Pause for Life, and they do a lot of adoption events, and they actually provide Crash's food, his vet, everything. I don't pay for anything. They delivered him to me same day.
Wow. So maybe if people can't adopt, they might be in a position to foster right now. So there's lots of options and ways to help out with the crisis. That's very cool. Okay, so let's turn to the law. You have been a lawyer for a short period of time, but I can vouch for you. You are a very, very talented young lawyer, exceptional in the courtroom, very good with clients, and you've done a lot of work, even though you have been licensed for a short period of time. So let's talk about orders of protection. If somebody gets an order of protection placed against them and they want to challenge it, what do they need to think about before they challenge it?
I would say think about having your evidence ready, because once you put in that you're requesting for a hearing, the court should set it within 10 days. So if you're requesting police records and stuff after you file, and then you don't have those ready, that can really hurt you, because you get one bite at that apple.
Yeah.
So, I have one right now that of course, everyone's anxious to get rid of this, especially if it's frivolous, but have all your ducks in a row so that you're ready on game day, which is quickly approaching.
That's a great point. You have one opportunity to challenge an order of protection. If it is upheld, and it can be upheld if the judge believes it's more likely than not. More likely than not. So it literally is he said, she said, and whoever the judge believes, that's the way it's going to go. And if the order of protection stays in place, how long is it in place?
It's 2 years now. It was recently one, but now it's 2 years. So it's a while. And I think, sorry, the one hearing that I actually attended with you, I really liked how the judge laid it out for the parties. She said, this is all I need to do is believe the plaintiff 51%, which is such a low standard.
It is a low standard. So when a order of protection has been put into place and it is frivolous, what is the type of evidence that people need to gather to prove that it's frivolous?
Well, of course, it depends on what the allegations are. And the allegations in the petition are listed there, and then the plaintiff is limited to those allegations. And I think that's important to keep in mind, because a lot of times people want to go off and all these other things that have happened, but you have a short time to talk to that judge, and you really want to show them, list out what the allegations were and what evidence do you have to counter that. So I know you said a little bit about he said, she said. If you're good with testimony, absolutely, you can testify to it. But, best records are ones that kind of can't be refuted. So police records, if there is any, video evidence, maybe to refute of course, if the incident happened on camera, if you're so lucky and that you can show that that's not what happened, but definitely everything that's very tangible and is just going to be much better than you saying that didn't happen.
Right. And so plaintiffs are limited to what they've written down. They are limited to the words on the page. Defendants are not. Defendants can bring anything, any evidence, any witnesses, and you don't have to provide notice to the other party of what your defense is. So do you recommend people work with a lawyer to put together that defense?
Absolutely. I mean, a lawyer is always going to be able to put that case together more perfectly. And the hearings are so short. So you do have to have a really good trial plan, because there's just not enough time to get everything. So having a lawyer would really help you hone in on, what do we need to prove? What do we need to show here?
And I think it's important to really think about it as jabs. What are the jabs of defense? How do you poke a hole here? How do you poke a hole here? How do you poke a hole here? Because when you can show maybe not 100% of what they were saying is true, you're really helping the judge make that 51% decision on what is more likely to be true. I also think demeanor is really important. So how do you coach people before their hearing if they're going to be testifying?
Definitely, we are calm. We are answering the questions that are asked. Don't get riled up, because especially, when you are the defendant, someone's making an allegation that you committed an act of domestic violence. So if you get on the stand and you are instantly, coming up here with your attitude, that's going to make it more likely that, maybe you did commit the act of domestic violence. So very calm, answering only the questions that are asked. Don't get riled up by anything on cross, even if it's not true. We come back and we have the opportunity to redirect. So don't get stressed out.
Right. And it's so hard because somebody's accusing you of something. So it's understandable that you're defensive. You're literally the defendant. Of course you're defensive. And of course this is emotional. And you might be worried about, how's this going to affect my job? How's this going to affect my license? How's this going to affect my ability to see my children? So practicing is absolutely crucial. And sometimes what I like to do is have a different attorney play the bad guy and practice cross-examination. And then there's some different coaching strategies that you can use to help. Like, one of the things that sometimes we'll do is have people be recorded so they can watch themselves back.
Yeah, that would be a good one for sure. This is how you're appearing. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Like, listen to your tone of voice, look at your body language. How are you coming across? Are you coming across as credible? How do you keep your emotions down and in check so you can show up how you want to show up? And I really do feel badly because depending on your natural mannerisms and speech patterns, that could really go one way or the other for you, which is one of the things that plaintiffs complain about with narcissists being oh so good at hiding and showing up the way they want to show up. But showing up the way you want to show up is crucial in these order of protection hearings.
Absolutely. And of course, I don't want to make light, because there are order of protections that absolutely should be upheld in every single aspect. But I do, in certain instances, if someone comes to us at Modern Law and wants to challenge an order of protection, sometimes, because how we talked about there's only that one bite at the apple, sometimes I do like to go through, do you think, especially if it's a, mother-father situation, do you think they would be okay with amending it, in terms of if there's certain aspects of that order of protection that are affecting their life, work, ability to make money. So I like to go through that option, because sometimes if the plaintiff is willing to, take off the gun provision so that they can carry guns if that's part of their job, or certain address so that they can continue with their job, sometimes that's a good option to go with first, to make sure that no matter what, at the end of this hearing, they're going to be okay at the end of it.
Absolutely. And you're not supposed to kind of trade dropping the order of protection for a certain parenting plan or exclusive use of the house, but you can. So if there is a way to come to, let's say that the order of protection is in place because one party's trying to set boundaries that the other person isn't respecting, and that happens. You can be in a relationship where you're used to not having any boundaries. Somebody, you're now breaking up, you're going through a divorce, somebody's trying to set boundaries and somebody's like, no, I will not accept those boundaries. And that can lead to a harassment or trespassing order of protection. And so by entering into a very structured, very strict parenting plan, you might be able to set the boundaries in place that both parties need to say, this isn't an appropriate order of protection. We don't need an order of protection, but we do need a written, enforceable court agreement for what is the expectations of both parties now that we're changing our relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something. And sometimes people get into orders of protection that they don't need, and they're like, this is actually making my life a lot more difficult because we can't exchange the children, because we can't have contact with each other. Dad can't drop them off at my house. I have to call someone to go to Starbucks. And that's a lot of work for
it is a lot of work.
Years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so some parallel parenting plan provisions can be really good. So what those might do is limit how contact is made. No calls, only email, or only through a parenting app like Talking Parents or Our Family Wizard or Proper drop-offs, provisions about drop-offs, like you're not going to go to the door, you're going to stay in your car, and the kids are going to get out of the car and they're going to go to the house, and you're just not going to interact. And that can be very helpful for two parents who are dealing with a lot of conflict and a lot of disagreement. that is not an order of protection, because an order of protection is meant to be there to protect people who are victims of domestic violence. And to be perfectly honest, the line can be close.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it's not close. And then you absolutely 100% need an order of protection. And sometimes somebody is using it as a tool. What did I see the other day? Ooh, I think there is this term called the smoking gun in divorce, which is frivolous accusations of domestic violence to get an advantage. And I don't recommend it. I don't think it's going to actually help you. And it also, I don't know, on a much broader level, it really hurts overall victims of domestic violence.
Absolutely. And I think people too, especially if they're not consulting lawyers and they're making these accusations, they don't understand that they can be held accountable for thousands and thousands of dollars of attorney's fees when it comes to light that you made everything up.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. How does that work in orders of protection?
You can request it at the end in the event that the order of protection is dropped. It won't always be granted, but especially if there's a large disparity of income, or if the claims were extremely, I think in the statute is the term unreasonable.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So, you make sure you have to request it. Otherwise the judge isn't going to just hand them to you. So you got to request it and put in your affidavit, and, it's a little more work, but in Arizona specifically, I have seen, because I did come from Massachusetts, a couple other places. I do think Arizona specifically does a really good job of ordering attorney's fees in instances where it's called for.
Nice. Okay. So what are the types of cases that you really like working on?
Ooh, well, of course, I love when me and my client connect as a personality level. I think those flow just so amazing in terms of communication and, what our goals are. But in terms of like content, I do like orders of protection, even though they are kind of sometimes a losing game. And so you go into it and the expectation is, we might not get this, but I like them in terms of you go in and you kind of have that time clock of what are we going to do here? I like the divorce. I like a modification. I mean, I am newer, but I haven't come across anything that I would say, okay, I'm never doing that again. Don't send those my way.
Yeah.
But and in terms of like my style, I don't know if you want me to go into that at all, but I do like to just keep the bigger picture in mind. What are our end goals here? I try my best not to get caught up, if opposing party or opposing counsel is very tit for tat. What are our goals here? And is it the children? Is it division of assets? And we're trying to get as much money as we can, and we're bleeding money because of all this communication back and forth. So I like to go into it with such an open mind and like, what's going to happen here? And then shift as things come up. I think communication with the other side, as long as it's healthy, is super important to be able to come to some sort of resolution. Even if we can just take one issue off the table for trial, that gives us so much more time and energy and effort to put into the things that really matter. And I mean, of course, if it's called for, then if the clause have to come out at trial, then they have to come out at trial. But I don't think that that's something that needs to be the forefront of everyone. I know a lot of people say, oh, I want like a pit bull as a lawyer, but sometimes I'm like, I don't think you want that right out of the gates, because at the end of the day, your audience is the judge, and it's not your ex or whoever it is. The audience is the judge, and how you come across to the judge, they're making the final decision. And I think that's also important to keep in mind. So having a big picture of all the moving parts is definitely kind of how I like to approach things.
Absolutely. You don't really want us to escalate your situation, right? Your situation's already rough. It's already awful. It's already awful for you and them and your kids. What you don't want is a lawyer to come in and make it worse, right? We should have a do no harm. But we don't. We don't have a do no harm. And there's plenty of lawyers who do harm, but we certainly don't want to. So that's a really great point. Really great point. All right, we are out of time for today. Thank you so much, Rachael, for coming on this episode of the Modern Divorce Podcast. If you are interested in working with Rachael or one of the other attorneys at Modern Law and you are in Arizona, give us a call. If you're outside of Arizona and you still need legal help, go ahead and check out winwithoutlawschool.com. And that is it for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you are anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.